Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plan for Gaza has become one of the most controversial strategies in recent Middle Eastern history. Since the October 7th attacks, Israel's military campaign has drawn global criticism, with many questioning whether Netanyahu's vision ensures security or deepens the crisis. Critics argue that the plan's promises of freedom and security mask a reality of destruction, occupation, and a humanitarian disaster, fueling both international outrage and internal dissent. As the world debates Netanyahu's true intentions, dismantling Hamas or reshaping Gaza's future, the consequences of this polarizing strategy are felt in every corner of the region. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has laid out a multi-pronged strategy for Gaza, one that he claims is essential for Israel's security and the region's stability. His approach is built on four main pillars, each of which has sparked intense debate both within Israel and internationally. These pillars are the destruction of Hamas as a military and political force, the demilitarization of the Gaza Strip, the establishment of a new local administration to govern Gaza, and the creation of so-called safe zones for civilians displaced by the conflict. Each objective is ambitious, and together they represent a sweeping vision for the future of Gaza, one that has proven deeply controversial. The first and most immediate goal is the total dismantlement of Hamas. Netanyahu has insisted that only by eliminating Hamas's military capabilities and political influence can Israel ensure lasting security. This has meant relentless ground and air operations targeting not just fighters but also infrastructure, command centers, and symbols of Hamas's authority. The scale and intensity of these operations have drawn global attention and criticism, as civilian areas are often caught in the crossfire. The second pillar is indefinite security control over Gaza. Israel aims to prevent any resurgence of militant groups by maintaining a strong military presence and tight control over movement in and out of the territory. This approach blurs the line between security and occupation, raising alarms among international observers and fueling fears of a prolonged military presence that could further destabilize the region. For governance, Netanyahu has categorically rejected the idea of the Palestinian Authority returning to power in Gaza, citing concerns over its effectiveness and legitimacy. Instead, he proposes a new, locally run administration, but details remain vague. Many analysts and diplomats argue that such a plan is unrealistic given the lack of credible local partners and the deep divisions within Palestinian society. The fourth pillar, the creation of safe zones for civilians, was intended to offer protection to those fleeing violence. However, in practice, these zones have been severely lacking in basic necessities like food, water, and medical care. Worse, they have not been immune to attacks, leaving displaced families vulnerable and deepening the humanitarian crisis. Critics, including human rights organizations and foreign governments, argue that Netanyahu's objectives are either unattainable or dangerously ambiguous. They warn that the lack of a clear, workable plan for Gaza's future risks prolonging instability and suffering for its people, while also undermining prospects for peace in the wider region. As skepticism grows both at home and abroad, many are left questioning whether Netanyahu's vision for Gaza is truly achievable, or if it will only deepen the uncertainty and hardship facing millions of Palestinians. In recent months, international condemnation of Netanyahu's Gaza strategy has reached unprecedented levels, with governments, human rights organizations, and ordinary citizens around the globe voicing their alarm and disapproval. The world is watching closely as the situation unfolds, and the chorus of criticism has only grown louder. As the humanitarian crisis in Gaza deepens, images of destroyed neighborhoods, overwhelmed hospitals, and displaced families have sparked outrage and heartbreak. Aid agencies warn of a looming catastrophe, with food, water, and medical supplies running dangerously low for the civilian population. The United Nations, along with key Western allies such as the United States, France, and Germany, have repeatedly called for an immediate ceasefire, urging all parties to prioritize the protection of civilians and to seek a diplomatic resolution. These calls have been echoed in emergency sessions and high-level summits, reflecting a rare consensus among global powers. In a move that underscores the gravity of the situation, Germany and the Netherlands have imposed arms embargoes on Israel, a historic and unprecedented step for these close allies. These embargoes signal deep concerns about potential violations of international law and mark a significant shift in Europe's approach to the conflict. Meanwhile, the United States, Israel's most important ally, continues to provide military and financial support, but frustration is mounting in Washington. American officials have expressed growing unease over Israel's military tactics and the rising civilian death toll, warning that continued escalation could jeopardize long-term regional stability and U.S. interests. Across the world, massive protests have erupted in major cities, with demonstrators demanding an immediate ceasefire and a renewed push for peace. The global movement for justice and accountability is gaining momentum, as people from diverse backgrounds unite in solidarity with Gaza's civilians and call for an end to the violence. As a result, Israel now finds itself more isolated on the world stage than ever before, defending a strategy that many see as both morally indefensible and strategically counterproductive. The pressure for change is mounting, and the world is demanding answers. The human cost of the Gaza campaign is staggering. Tens of thousands have lost their lives, with the overwhelming majority being women and children. Each day the death toll rises, and the pain of loss ripples through every family and community. The scale of suffering is almost unimaginable as families are torn apart and entire generations are at risk of being lost. Nearly 2 million people have been forced from their homes, fleeing relentless bombardment and destruction. The streets are filled with families carrying what little they can salvage, searching for any place of safety amid the chaos. Gaza's infrastructure lies in ruins. Entire neighborhoods have been reduced to rubble, hospitals are overwhelmed or destroyed, and basic services like electricity, water, and sanitation have collapsed. The destruction is so widespread that recovery seems almost impossible. Makeshift camps and overcrowded shelters offer little safety or comfort. Families are crammed into tents and abandoned buildings, exposed to the elements and lacking privacy or security. Disease spreads quickly in these cramped conditions, and hope is in short supply. Humanitarian aid convoys face immense challenges just to reach those in need. Blockades, damaged roads, and ongoing violence make it nearly impossible to deliver food, water, and medical supplies. Volunteers risk their lives every day to bring relief to desperate families. Severe restrictions and ongoing violence have created a man-made famine. Food is scarce, and families wait in long lines for hours, hoping for a small ration to feed their children. The shelves are empty, and hunger is everywhere. Hundreds have already died from starvation and preventable diseases. Children are especially vulnerable, their bodies weakened by malnutrition and lack of clean water. Hospitals, when they function at all, are filled with patients suffering from hunger and illness. Aid agencies warn that the blockade and the destruction of food and water sources have pushed Gaza to the brink. The collapse of supply lines means that even basic necessities are out of reach for most families. The crisis has become a weapon of war, with access to food, water, and medicine deliberately restricted. Farmland lies in ruins and people queue for hours just to receive a fraction of what they need to survive. The humanitarian disaster is no longer just collateral damage. It has become a central feature of the conflict's strategy. Hospitals are overwhelmed, infrastructure is shattered, and even humanitarian workers are not safe from attack. Gaza's population faces not only the constant threat of bombs and airstrikes, but also the daily struggle to find food, water, and shelter. Every day is a battle for survival. In the midst of devastation, families search desperately for clean water and something to eat, clinging to hope in a landscape transformed by war and deprivation. Netanyahu's Gaza policy has fractured Israeli society, exposing deep divisions within the military, political elite, and public. Military leaders warn that a prolonged occupation could trap Israel in endless conflict, draining resources and risking soldiers' lives. Hostage families, once supportive, now protest for negotiated releases, fearing the military campaign endangers their loved ones. Critics accuse Netanyahu of using the war to bolster his political survival, deflecting blame for past failures. The debate over victory versus pragmatism has split the nation, with many arguing that military force alone cannot secure Israel's future. The internal rift reflects a broader crisis of confidence in leadership and strategy. Human rights groups and legal experts warn that Israel's actions in Gaza may violate international law, particularly regarding mass displacement and collective punishment. The policy of forcing civilians into unsafe safe zones and maintaining indefinite military control raises accusations of war crimes and occupation. Israel's refusal to accept the responsibilities of an occupying power while exercising control has drawn sharp legal scrutiny. Documented attacks on civilian infrastructure and aid blockades have led to cases at the International Criminal Court. Far-right calls for permanent resettlement of Gaza heighten fears of ethnic cleansing and irreversible demographic change. The legal and ethical fallout threatens to further isolate Israel and undermine its global standing. Netanyahu's strategy risks overextending Israel militarily and isolating it diplomatically. The Gaza campaign has stretched the IDF thin, while clashes with Hezbollah and Iran threaten to ignite wider regional wars. Diplomatic support is eroding, with even the US signaling frustration and Europe imposing arms embargoes. The world increasingly demands a political solution, but Netanyahu's rejection of the two-state framework leaves Israel at odds with global consensus. Instead of enhancing security, the current path may fuel more extremism and instability across the region. Each military gain comes at the cost of greater strategic vulnerability. Israel faces the danger of winning battles but losing the broader war for peace and legitimacy. Netanyahu's far-right coalition partners openly push for re-establishing Jewish settlements in Gaza, adding an explosive ideological layer to the conflict. Senior ministers frame the war as a chance to reclaim land, contradicting Netanyahu's public denials of reoccupation. This agenda fuels global fears that the war's true aim is permanent control and expansion, not just security. The settlement push undermines prospects for a two-state solution and alienates potential Arab partners for peace or reconstruction. Netanyahu's ambiguity on the issue allows extremist voices to dominate, deepening international suspicion. The conflict is no longer just about Hamas. It's about the future ownership of Gaza itself. Netanyahu's military-first approach in Gaza raises a fundamental question. Can true security be achieved by force alone? The cost, humanitarian, political and moral, has been immense, with little sign of lasting peace. While Hamas may be weakened, the devastation in Gaza breeds new grievances and future instability. The world agrees only a political solution, not endless war, can bring real security to Israelis and Palestinians. By rejecting diplomacy, Israel risks perpetual conflict and deepening isolation. The legacy of this strategy will be measured not by military victories, but by whether it leaves the region safer or more divided. The world is watching to see if Israel will choose a different path.